Christian tradition, some people have foot washing services on the Thursday before Easter. They do this in following the example of Jesus, who on the week before he was crucified, gathered with his disciples to celebrate the Passover meal together. And while they were celebrating, Jesus, their leader, the one that they would look up to, he humbled himself and washed his disciples' feet. Something that they wouldn't have expected him to do, something they would have expected a servant to do. But Jesus did this to demonstrate his great love for his disciples and for all of us, to show us the way he was calling us to, and to tell more about that path, that journey he was on towards the cross. That journey to the cross for our Easter time that we celebrate was a journey marked by humility and sacrifice and service out of his love for us. So that's what Christians often will do on the week before Easter, on the Thursday. Some people call it Maundy Thursday. They will gather together and wash one another's feet as an example of Jesus. The first time I ever went to a foot washing service at a church, I really didn't know what to expect. Now, I had washed my feet before, my own feet, but the idea of gathering with a bunch of people that I didn't even know to engage in a group activity of washing feet was an entirely different story. When we think about feet, some people either love them, they find them very attractive and nice, but other people find them something that they're uncomfortable with. We have different feelings about feet. Feet are something that are so basic. We use them every day to get from one place to another as we walk. They're the things that we stuff in our shoes. They're the things that get stinky and sweaty. They're the things that we don't often think about. And yet there's also something so personal about our feet. To show our feet to someone else is a level of intimacy that sometimes we can feel uncomfortable about. So I wondered, what would that be like to be part of a service where washing one another's feet was the focus of what we were doing to gather there together? As I went and was a part of this service, they began with a time of worship, and then they separated into two groups. And I was part of the women's group that went off into one location in the church. And we gathered there together. There was a ring of a circle of chairs around the outside of a room. And the women just sat down wherever they chose. And one of the older women in the group, she got up and she got a basin and a jug of water and a towel. And she proceeded to kneel down in front of the woman beside her. And she had the other woman place her feet above the basin. And she poured water over her feet. And then she brought her foot out and dried it with a towel. And as she did this, the other women spontaneously just began to sing. And they sang so beautifully. There were harmonies and their voices blended together with just such an amazing sense of togetherness and peace and worship. And they went around the circle. Each woman would wash the feet of the woman beside her. And I have to say that as much as I was feeling a sense of apprehension beginning this time, I left with a sense of holy awe and wonder about the intimacy and the connection with God that was created. As these women who did life together, they were part of the same church community. There were times, I'm sure, that some of them disagreed, or some of them didn't always have the best feelings for one another. And yet to see them in this space where they were showing love and humility to one another by washing each other's feet was such a beautiful expression of Jesus' love for us. I don't think anything could have prepared me for that time. And I'm glad I had that opportunity to experience that. Hospitality was super important in the time of Jesus and in his culture. The roads in Palestine would have been, in the dry season, just covered with dust. They were unpaved, and people would have been walking through these dusty streets. And in times of the wet season, they would have been muddy. So people who would have been wearing sandals as their main type of footwear when they came to a home would have had their feet been dirty, messy, dusty. There were animals in the street, and who knows what they would have been stepping in. So, as a sign of care and hospitality, when someone arrived at your home, it was the host's responsibility to make sure they had water for their feet, that they could either wash their feet themselves, or as a sign of great honor and respect, that they would have a servant wash the feet for them. This was the culture that Jesus was a part of. And this is the culture in which he washes his disciples' feet and invites us to do the same. Today, as we are celebrating Maundy Thursday and remembering this time where Jesus, in his love and humility, washed the feet of his disciples, I want to invite you to participate in this act of foot washing. I'm going to read the account in the Gospel of John where Jesus washes his disciples' feet. And then I want to invite you to participate at home. Now, to do this, you'll just need a few basic supplies. You'll need a basin, something that you can pour water into. You'll need a jug with some water in it, and you'll need a towel. Now, if you have family members around and want to do this together, what a great opportunity to be able to show your love for one another. If you've had even arguments in your family, what a great way to move to that place of humility and forgiveness as you wash one another's feet. If you live on your own, or you don't feel comfortable participating in this activity with someone else at your home, I invite you to do so through your imagination. To imagine what it would be like Jesus saying to you that he wants to wash your feet. To imagine him washing your feet. Asking yourself how you would respond to that offer. And then to imagine yourself washing the feet of someone else. Perhaps someone else that you care about. Perhaps someone else that you even have hard feelings towards. Or someone you have difficulty loving. What would it mean for you to, even in your mind, visualize showing humility and love by washing their feet? I'm going to read from the Gospel of John. This is in John chapter 13, verses 1 to 17. If you have a Bible and want to read along with me, I invite you to do that as well. Jesus washes his disciples' feet. This is in John chapter 13. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who've had a bath need only to wash their feet, Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said not every one was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Jesus celebrated the Passover with his disciples on the night that he washed their feet. He knew that they were going to betray him and abandon him when he faced his moment of crisis, when he was arrested and tried and brought to the time of crucifixion. And yet, knowing this level of betrayal from his friends, Jesus still got down on his knees in humility and servanthood and washed the feet of his disciples. What a beautiful picture of God's unconditional, faithful love for us. That he was willing to go to whatever lengths it took. Even in the midst of our betrayal and our turning against him, God stayed faithful. When Jesus washed his disciples' feet, it was pointing to his greater act of love and service and humility that was on the cross before him. That he would show how much his unconditional love would go to be able to connect with us and to free us from the sin and the self-destructive choices that keep us from connecting with God, with ourselves, and with one another. God's love is unconditional, even when ours is not. And Jesus demonstrated that to us when he washed his disciples' feet. As we read the gospel accounts of Jesus' last days before his crucifixion together, we get a bigger picture and more of the pieces of the puzzle of what was going on that night Jesus washed his disciples' feet. In the Gospel of Luke, we read that a dispute also arose among them. Which of them would be regarded as the greatest? That's in Luke 22, verse 24. Even as Jesus is facing the cross, the disciples are wondering who among them is going to be greatest. And then here comes Jesus. In the midst of this argument about greatness, he bows low and shows true greatness by washing his disciples' feet. He showed humility. He showed love. He showed that he didn't need the praise of people to be considered worthy. So often we look to the praise of others, the esteem, the affirmation of others for our own worth. But God says, I love you just because I made you and you are my child. And as he washed his disciples' feet, he wanted them to receive that love. And as we participate in the act of washing one another's feet, can we also receive that love, that we are accepted by God because he loves us and because we are his children? I want to read a poem by Anne Siddall, and it talks about this idea of foot washing as something that we think we have to earn our approval in this world, and yet Jesus shows us otherwise. Unless I wash you, you have no share with me. If only it were otherwise. If only I could present my credentials, show my record of service, get some kind of unlimited pass. In every area of my life, I am more used to proving how adequate I am, presenting a polished image, gaining certain privileges. But you, Lord, you bring me down to where you are kneeling and take hold of the feet I prefer to hide. We are here together, near the ground, and in this humble position, I am touched by you and made clean. This invites us to follow his example of love, of humility, of being a servant to others. He says, this is the example that I have set you, both by washing feet, but also by sacrificially dying on the cross to show God's love. As we follow Jesus, it can be hard to love like that. But God helps us, he strengthens us, and as we engage in practices like washing one another's feet, it helps us to cultivate our hearts so we are able to love well, that we are able to love with humility, and we are able to receive love with an open heart too. We're going to have a time now where we'll share in foot washing together. I'm going to demonstrate that, and I invite you, wherever you are at home, to participate as well. To participate with the people around you, to demonstrate your love for them, your humility, and also your willingness to receive love from them. May Jesus be our example in how we love. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for your unconditional, humble servant love that you showed us. You showed your disciples that by washing their feet. And you show that love to all of us as you died on the cross, to show how unconditional, how faithful your love is toward us. God, may we receive that love, and may we know the depth of your care for us. And God, may we be transformed to people who are able to love more like you love. Where there are people in our lives where we find it difficult to love, Lord, help us to see them as you see them, and may we love like you love. God, inspire us with the example of your washing your disciples' feet, and may we go and do likewise. And may the world be impacted by the love of God as we show others what it looks like to love with humility and faithfulness, just like you did, Lord. We pray these things in your name. Amen.